Well, what you do is you just look at the evidence, you analyze it, and if it isn't a staged event, the evidence will come out to that. If it is a staged event, you will see the earmarks. I mean, here's an example. Christmas Day, we'd forgotten eggs. I was driving around looking for a place that was open. My wife sent me out to get eggs, and I'm listening to the radio, and they announced there's been an underwear bombing on a flight from Amsterdam to Detroit. I go in, buy the eggs, come back out, and they're already got shirt off on Fox News Radio, who, by the way, makes a bunch of money off of it, saying, don't worry, we just decided to put in naked body scanners, though I knew he'd ordered them a year before when he'd still been in office, the head of Homeland-Security. And then immediately several witnesses, Kurt Haskell and others, a lawyer, said a sharp-dressed man led the underwear bomber in Amsterdam up through the body scanners. He didn't have to show ID, didn't have to show passport, argued with him, basically had a security clearance, got him on the plane without ID. So then I said, this is a week into it, I had Haskell on. I said, okay, you ought to interview him for the show. It's amazing. His wife saw it, other witnesses. Then the FBI showed up and basically threatened him, called him a liar in the media. Then other witnesses came out about the sharp-dressed man. Then Haskell said once they were put into the customs, the dog ran over and alerted to this other man who previously it looked like had been with the bomber. And his bag had a bomb. They said, get out, there's a bomb. They arrested the guy. The FBI lied and said, we arrested no one. Then a month later, they had to admit, we did arrest somebody. It's national security. And here's the Detroit News. Undersecretary of the State Department, Kennedy, Patrick F. Kennedy, said that an unnamed U.S. intelligence agency, this is on screen right now, a terror suspect kept visa to avoid tipping off larger investigation. And then when you read it, it says they were ordered to let him get on the plane and waive his visa. So, boom. Same thing with the Fort Hood shooter. They wanted to bust him. They were ordered for 2 years to leave him alone. Same thing with all of these events. So once you know how they do it, and once you see them really promote something and push it, and I don't want to waste, I mean, we want to hear from you instead of me ranting, but it was the same story with the Joe Stack flying into the IRS building. All the same story, Jesse.
Okay. Well, that clears it up a little bit.
But I mean, my point is, I went on air in the week after that happened, and I said, no, it may just be a lone Muslim nut. But then, in every case, it's like the 9/11 hijackers. I've had the head of the U.S. Embassy in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia on. They were ordered, even though they were on a terror list, to let them in, and the CIA called and said, they work for us. This is part of national security. That's on record, too.
How do you find all this stuff, Alex?
Well, I've become completely obsessed and addicted to researching it. And, you know, I saw Springman, the head of the embassy, in the Toronto Star the month after 9/11. I interviewed him then. I've interviewed him many other times since then. I had him on a month ago, and he said clearly the underwear bomber's the same deal, and he was the head of the embassy.
Wow. Interesting stuff.
Well, but you know how criminals work, though. They do things in a pathological way, meaning over and over again. So it's...
Well, and the other thing is, too, if it works one time, it'll work again.
Exactly. I mean, take Northwoods. Kennedy says no in 63, but then what did they do a year later at Tonkin? What did they do a few years later in 67 with the Liberty? I mean, they do the same thing over and over again. What is Northwoods, right here in my hand, folks, what does Operation Northwoods say they'll do? They'll bomb D.C., bomb Miami, graze troops at U.S. bases, wound them, grazing troops. What did we see at the Pentagon?
Exactly what you said.
and who sat at the feet of L.L. Lemonster, who set up the continuity government plan under Nixon, but Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld?
Yeah. Well, then I loved that thing in 92 when they were part of that think tank. You know, where they did the something or other experiment or whatever. It was Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, Cheney, the whole thing, and they get all. And the question was, how do we keep the United States the sole superpower now with the fall of the Soviet Union? And they go through this litany of everything, and then in the end, it's got the summary. To implement everything we've recommended will take many, many, many years, unless a Pearl Harbor type of event were to occur.
And they said 3,000 dead, like Pearl Harbor. What happened on 9/11?
Exactly.
Oh, it's incredible. But see, that's the problem. You hit on something key here. Most of the so-called conspiracy theorists do just say everything's a conspiracy without evidence. And so I'm a conspiracy, you're a conspiracy, Ron Paul's a conspiracy with no evidence, ignoring the fruit of what we do. But that's not really the public's fault. If the government has been caught lying more than they tell the truth and there's a total loss of confidence, then there's just going to be a loss of confidence in everything. What do we do about that?
You know how I counter that, Alex? I got that again today, where they said, are you a conspiracy theorist? And I looked at who, Alan Combs asked me that. And I looked back at him and said, well, Alan, the government's a conspiracy theorist too. They've never proved anything. I said, look at all the murders that took place in the 60s and early 70s, all those assassinations, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, Jack Kennedy, there was never a trial for any of these guys. Notice how there's never a trial for any of these assassins that happen.
Well, we know under COINTELPRO that got declassified in 77 that the FBI would stage events, stage crimes, and blame it on people. We know Obama's regulations are, Cass Sunstein wrote a big policy paper saying infiltrate 9/11 truth and commit acts of violence so we can put them in jail.
Yeah, I couldn't believe when I read that about that guy from Harvard that wrote that paper saying that the 9/11 truthers and all this stuff, that they should be, put under surveillance and all this other stuff. Why? Because we question our government? I have to sit and think that all the founding fathers of this country have got to be turning over in their graves right now.
They are. We're going to skip this break coming up with Jesse Ventura. Will be with us into the next hour. I want to start getting into the book here in just a moment, chapter by chapter, because believe me, folks, when I tell you, you need to get this book. When I was sent an advance copy, I didn't carry Ventura's last book because when I did call to get it, it was sold out. I got involved early because I want people to read this. I mean, this is just incredible information, but let's bring up a few other issues. We know Secretary of Defense Cohen in 97 told the Army Times, we have earthquake weapons, we have weather weapons, so do other governments. A lot of that's been declassified. The new White House science czar says they are geoengineering the earth, manipulating the weather right now. That'd be a great episode because it's all pretty much admitted, but we could go deeper into it.
Well, we kind of did that with HAARP.
And that's where I'm going.
Yep.
With the Chile earthquake and and this is even on CNN, and with the Haiti earthquake, they reported the sky had like an Aurora Borealis even during the day in the minutes before the earthquake. And I'm not saying these were staged, but if the government admits they have these systems, do we at least investigate it?
Yeah, it's very interesting. They did that. It was the same thing in Indonesia, too, when they had the huge tsunami there. There was no indication of it. There was no earthquake before it. And I remember when I was doing my show, of course, Alex, not you, but Alex on the show, who's always the cynic, he said to me, Governor, are you trying to say that they would intentionally kill all these people for no reason? And I said, Alex, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying they could just be testing this thing out. And maybe when they test it out, this is the result. What do you think? They're going to come back then and say, oops?
Exactly. Some mathematicians, when we posted this on InfoWars and Prison Planet a few weeks ago, have looked at the frequency of mega earthquakes, these big earthquakes, 8 and above, and it's mathematically getting very suspicious that they keep hitting right in population centers. Yeah,
that is pretty interesting.
Man.
But then again, of course, I'm playing the devil's advocate, Alex, not necessarily big, but, we've always had earthquakes even before we had the technology, so it may not be fair to attribute every earthquake to them.
Oh, no, I totally agree with you. I think these are probably just natural. But if the government admits they have this, then you've got to start looking into it. We are in the 21st century.
And what's interesting about it, too, was that treaty that everybody signed years ago saying that they would not use, if anyone developed the capability to control the weather, that it could not be used in a situation of war and all that. But I suppose they view it as, well, we're not at war.
Well, that's another great point that you just made. And